Welcome to our Fireside Chat. I have with me here Erica Vlahinos Anstine from OpenAI. Super rock star who has an unconventional journey. And so I'm going to first ask Erica to introduce herself before I go into the Fireside questions. So Erica, do you want to just give, what do you do currently at OpenAI? Tell us about your role, what does your team do, and how did you end up where you are now? That's the question on everyone's mind.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Really, this is a treat for me, and I'm so thrilled to be talking to you tonight. I'm a go-to-market director at OpenAI, and what I do day to day, and what my team does, is help people evaluate, implement, and measure the impact of AI on their business. So evaluate, we help them figure out what solutions are best for them and where to apply. Implement is, okay, you've picked an AI solution, how the heck do you actually get it involved in your business? And measure the impact is, how do you make sure it's working? How do you make sure it's worth the investment or the money that you've put up front to bring it in-house? The journey here is quite long. Should I launch in?
Absolutely, launch in, because I think we really want to hear the journey, and her journey is something you all want to hear, trust me.
So first I'll start off by sharing that I come from an immigrant household. My dad immigrated to the US in his late 20s from Greece, and he came here and he didn't speak a word of English when he arrived. He had $200, and the immigrant mentality, I think, was a huge part of the journey I've been on, and the level of work ethic that comes from an immigrant household, where you have a level of awareness of how fortunate you are to be here. And so something that he talked a lot about growing up was he wanted his kids to grow up in America, because we have mobility here that you don't have in a lot of countries, where if you work hard, you can change your life trajectory in a very short period of time, and certainly in a lifetime. And I didn't experience that firsthand until I was 27, which is when I decided to make a big career pivot. So I had started in the arts. I was working in New York City as a playwright and as an actor. I had a few shows off Broadway on Theater Row, if anyone knows the Laurie Beachman, 42nd and 9. Yeah, we have some theater people here. So I was there 2014 to early 2019. And then I was between shows. My next show was set to open in October 2020. As you can imagine, that show did not open, and the theater closed temporarily. The new ownership came in. So I was between shows, and I was working 2 jobs. I was teaching with VIP Kid, which is an online service where they hired a bunch of people that had done children's theater to teach kids in China English. And so I was teaching 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. online. And then I would get on the train and I would go work 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. as a personal assistant to an interior designer. And I was working such long hours, and one day I had worked 2 jobs in the same day, so it was one of the days where I had both jobs. And I was like, man, this grind is killing me. I'm almost 30, I was 27 at the time, and I was like, but at least I made bank today. Like, I made money today. And so I went and I took my calculator and I was like, how much did I make? Because I did both jobs today. And I went through and I did the math. And I got to the end of my math, and my take home at the end of the day, after tax, was $145 for the day. And I was like, damn, like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this is not gonna take me where I wanna be at 30, and it won't take me to the type of mom I wanna be. Like, I wanted to be able to support kids someday. This is not the life trajectory I wanna be on. And so I wrote my parents an email to get their ideas of other jobs I could do. And the title of the email was, the subject line was income. And I just listed out truly like 85 things that I thought of that I could do to make money. I was like, I'm gonna sell my eggs. I was like, I can go be a stripper. Like, what can I do that? And one item on that list was sales. And so I got an email back from my parents. I was like, I need to increase my income, guys. Like, what do I do? I was so tired of living like this. It was so hard. And my dog was better insured than me. I had a little dog that I gave pet insurance to, and I was like, my dog has health insurance and I don't. Like, something's gotta change. So they responded and said, we're gonna talk tonight. And they were like, look at this one item, number 78, you said sales. And so I went online and I looked up entry-level sales jobs, New York City. And one of them was for a software company. I had a BFA in musical theater, so not your most serious degree. You know. BFA. So you know.
I mean, I understand the pain. I went to college for music production, Berkeley College of Music.
And it's like, it's great to have a degree, and also, no one's looking at me being like, what grade did you get on Greek whaling? I had a class in college called Greek whaling, where we would lay on the ground, acting degree, and they'd be like, show us the wail, the cry of a mother who's lost her child, and a bunch of 19-year-olds are like, oh. It didn't really prepare me for success necessarily. So I was nervous that no one would take me seriously, and I didn't know how to get started really. And I found this one opening, and I spent a lot of time on my resume trying to make every single thing I'd ever done sound like it in some way was relevant to sales. And I got in the interview loop, and I just focused on studying really hard. I studied about the technology that they sold. I watched every video I could of the CEO speaking, and I got the job. And it was an entry-level sales position, sales development representative. So that's a great starting place for anyone looking to go to market, which is essentially sales or revenue work within a tech organization. And that was really the start of it all. And that was 7 years ago. And now I'm one of the founding members of the New York go-to-market team for OpenAI.
You just said a word, founding. What does it mean to be a founding go-to-market leader? So was that a playbook? Did you write a playbook? How should we think about it? Tell us more.
So previously to my joining OpenAI, we only really had a presence in San Francisco. So I was like employee number 1,006 or something, and we now have 8,000 employees. So it's been an incredible growth in the last 2 years. And to be a founding member of a team is we don't have a presence yet in a city. And so we are looking for a collection of people to start a culture and to really start an office within a different location. So we have people that were like founding members of our London office, for example. And the reason that those are called founding members is because it's a lot more similar to being a member of a startup than it is to joining an existing company. For example, I was the third hire on the New York go-to-market team. When I started, we didn't have an office in New York. 3 months in, we had a WeWork that they put us in, and we had a printout paper that said OpenAI, like crooked, taped to a door, and that was like OpenAI's New York HQ. And since then, we've graduated to an office, and your team has been there. Went from 1 floor with 20 people to 3 floors with 300. So that's what it means to be a founding member of a new team within an existing organization.
Wow, no, that is impressive. And then I want to double click on your background. So you have grown a company which is clearly right now a market leader. Your background was in finance, which didn't necessarily set you up for success. So how did you bring yourself up to speed on all things tech to sound credible, right? That's what we're all grappling with here. How do we educate ourselves? How do we sound credible? And how do we create that true life for ourselves? And how did you do that?
That's such a great question. One of the biggest things I learned from the transition from arts into tech is that there are so many more transferable skills than you think. And the skills that we have from unconventional backgrounds are incredibly unique. Incredibly unique. I'm in an office full of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people with the same general background, which means they bring to some extent some of the same general thoughts and opinions into the room. And so it's a huge advantage to come from a different path because you have a different perspective. So for example, I came from the theater world. I was writing and performing my own shows, and that meant I had this instant feedback loop where I would write material, and go out on stage and perform it, and look at a room of people and see how they responded, and go back the next night, make edits based on their responses, and I had this really fast iterative loop of storytelling. And what you learn pretty quickly, at least in sales, and I think this is really applicable in many roles, is there's huge value to knowing how to tell a story, to knowing how to empathize, which is what acting is. How must it feel? Like when I'm on with a CEO, I worked recently with the 9th largest employer in the world, 600,000 employees. Their CEO is grappling with really specific questions as this AI transition is looming. The empathy to say, how must he feel? This guy's responsible for this many people's jobs. He's been in the role for 2 years. CEO turnover has never been higher. He is looking for guidance. How must it feel to be him? Is exactly the same skill set that I was given as an actor, which is how does it feel to be this person? How do you structure this story in a way that's digestible? How do you continue to iterate or improve the way you communicate this explanation of a technology or this description of how to implement it successfully into a business? All of those skills are transferable, and I wish I knew that sooner. I wish I knew that the experience I had was relevant and that it was unique. Because today, I was just talking to my spouse about this in my first job, which was at a company called Entopology, that was the software company. I hid my background at first. I was like, no one's gonna take me seriously. I don't want anyone to know that I was from the theater. I felt behind. I was starting at 27, and I felt like everyone was fresh out of college, and I was like, I just really want them to take me seriously, and it took me a long time to start speaking openly about the fact that I come from the theater. Once I did, I started getting invited into rooms that I had not been invited into before. For example, we were pitching, we had a big presentation to make to a large aerospace manufacturer, and our CRO was like, Erica, you came from the theater, right? The presentation is terrible. Can you come in and give them some advice on storytelling? And so I got called into this room, and I was talking to, people who've been doing this for 20 years, giving them advice on how to structure their story. Because that was a skill they didn't have, but that was a unique skill in that room. There was not a lot of people who had written, and there were not a lot of people who understood narrative. So I guess I would say the skills are transferable. Take the time to look at the actual skills that you've learned from the background you have and start to think about where they might be beneficial to a business. And those are going to become your calling card whenever you've got your foot in the door, and even to get in.
Thank you. That is very helpful. So leaning a little more in on, when you're talking to enterprises and companies, you're looking at what is working for them, what is not working for them, you're advising them. So what does that look like? Can you talk a little bit more about that? What's the most common thing that goes right, and what's the most common thing that goes wrong?
So interesting. So we're seeing a lot of different approaches to AI implementation right now. I think what goes wrong is lack of executive alignment. So you have a bunch of people in C-suite. They're in a high stakes position right now in this particular moment in time. All the reasons that AI is a huge opportunity for every person in this room to completely leapfrog and have career opportunities that would not be available 10 years ago is also an opportunity for these existing businesses to be completely surpassed or leapfrog professionally. And so they're in a high stakes situation, and it requires a room of people who sometimes have varying degrees of ego to agree on something, to agree on a strategy and commit to it. So I think one of the hardest ones is executive alignment and standardization. So organizations that are saying, well, we believe in AI, we're gonna give Finance Quad, we're gonna give this group ChatGPT Enterprise, we're gonna give this group Gemini, and unless you're standardizing, it's incredibly hard to move past maybe silo productivity gains into standardizing a new way of working, which is where you're gonna see ROI and you're gonna see significant change. On the flip side of that, the people that are doing a really good job are being empathetic. So leaders that are leading with empathy. This is a big change for people. This is a huge change. In the last 3 months, the job of a software engineer has completely transformed. completely transformed. We have companies where people went from writing 100 or 95% of their code manually in December of last year, and today, 95% of it is being written by AI. This is a big transition. And so investing in your people and saying, this is a significant change, it's happening faster than we've ever seen a change like this, 13 times faster than rate of adoption of the internet. So ChatGPT has over 900 million weekly active users today. That means 1 in 9 living human beings on Earth will use ChatGPT in the next 7 days. It took the internet 13 years to get to 800 million total active users. So the rate of transition is fast. I think the people that are successful recognize that you have to commit to your people and help them through this transition. I think in the future, people are gonna sit around in 10 or 15 years and say, God, where did you work when that happened? What was your experience like? And some people are gonna be like, oh my God, our CEO was incredible. It wasn't scary at all. And some people are gonna be like, it was terrifying. Everyone was getting fired. No one knew what was happening. So I think it matters a lot to invest in people right now.
That's the perfect segue. So the landscape is changing. It's changing fast. We need the people. So what do you think are the emerging roles? Because we are in a room full of builders here who are looking to switch their careers. They are learning AI and they're looking for AI-enabled roles. So where do you think, as someone who's in that industry, where is this industry going? And what are the roles that are going to emerge and the needs that enterprises are going to need?
I think the first thing I'll say is this is an unprecedented opportunity for career mobility. The exact roles that will emerge, it's very hard to know. None of us have a crystal ball. I don't know what my role is going to look like in 2 years. I don't think anyone in coding could have predicted this, 4 or 5 years ago even. That said, AI skills are very, very much in demand. I'll give you an example. With Sora, we were doing video generation, and I was working with a big movie production company that does franchise superhero kind of stuff. And we were working with their head of special effects, and he was talking about how he was hiring for people to do the next, movie that they were working on. And he said, typically, I would hire my lead special effects person to be somebody who had 20 years of experience. And he goes, now I am exclusively looking at people who have AI experience. And so he is hiring to be the head of special effects for this movie, somebody with 2 or 3 years of experience, because AI experience, 2 or 3 years of it, matters more today in almost any role than it does to have 20 years of experience. So the opportunity to jump into a different level professionally, this is an incredibly unique moment in time. You guys are already excellent and examples of excellence for being in this room at all and for committing your time to learning this skill ahead of everyone else. Any role that exists today, figure out how to utilize AI for it and at an advanced level. So for example, it is not useful to me today if I'm hiring somebody who knows how to do go-to-market or sales the old way. That is not a valuable skill. It's a dime a dozen in my world. What is valuable is my peers who are looking at things like OpenClaw, and they're able to say, well, I built myself an SDR agent, and this is the playbook I taught it, and I built myself an outbounding agent, and I built myself an agent that does this, and here's how I orchestrate these 10 agents. That person will get a job over somebody who has 15 years of enterprise sales experience today because of that skill set. So to kind of overview that, any job that exists today, you can figure out how to use AI to do it more succinctly, and it will be an incredibly valuable skill for any business to bring in.
That is very helpful. I know you all are bursting with questions. I'm going to ask one last question before I'm going to open it up in the room, I promise, not from me. So a lot of the builders are building their own AI-powered products in this room. And what would you suggest for them as guidance? How should they think about it? How should they talk about it? How should they evaluate this person gets it versus saying, oh, it's just cool? Give us some guidance.
Yeah, you said building their own AI products?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All of them are building their own AI products here.
Yeah, so cool. My first piece of advice would be don't build an AI version of something that already exists. So, for example, we have CRM tools Salesforce is a CRM tool. It stores all the information of all of your customers and their contracts and whatever. Don't say, I'm going to go out and build an AI Salesforce. The tools we need, we don't know about yet because this is a big enough change. For example, you guys might have started working with this, but OpenAI was the first to release a CUA, computer using agent. So a computer using agent can interact with user interface and do anything that a human can do on a computer. So the first level of that is like, wow, that's so neat. No, it's like so much bigger than that. Here's why. Salesforce is a CRM tool. You have to update all these fields in it. Historically, the ability to automate the use of Salesforce was contingent on which API endpoints it opened up. So if I have 10 fields that I need to fill in, and Salesforce says 8 of them you can edit from some other source, from some other tool, but these last 2, you have to come into Salesforce to do. And that was Salesforce's moat. So the automation capabilities were limited by the API endpoints that various software companies opened up. When you have CUA, when you have AI that can automate anything a human can do on a computer, your opportunities for automation are completely changed. It is a complete change of the game. Will we need a CRM tool in 5 years, in 2 years? Or will that be some sort of data repository that lives somewhere else, and the only thing it has to do is interact with AI? It doesn't even need a user interface, because why would a human go into it when I could talk into my phone and say, add this person's email to the list of contacts from XYZ company? So, when you're figuring out what to build, don't build something, an AI version of what already exists. Look at what problems people are trying to solve and how AI can solve them. So what was the purpose of the CRM? I want something that stores customer information so that we have a really robust understanding of our customer base, so that if my CEO calls tomorrow and says, how big of a contract you have with XYZ company and is the contract size increasing every year, I can answer that question. So I would lean way back out, zoom out, and say, what actual problems are people trying to solve, and how can AI solve them? Get out of your head the old way, and I think those are going to be transformative technologies that can lead to successful businesses, but even things like successful acquisitions from AI companies.
All right. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the